can recreate my part.
See, that's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that's one of my guests, Cynthia French, backup singer for Reba McEntire, and my other guests, Dr. Thomas Hessling and Elise Curry, are here to talk about eating disorders. And for the young lady who called us earlier, Carla from Point Loma, if you would call back and give your name and address to Chris, our producer, Cynthia would like to send you a copy of her book on her experiences with eating disorders. The book is called Humanville, and she'll send you a copy, Carla, if you'd be so kind as to call back, 800-760-KFMB. That's 760-5362. Give Chris your name and address, and Cynthia will mail that book out to you.
Right.
In addition, Cynthia wants to give away another copy of her book to the first caller besides Carla.
Yes.
So we're going to give two copies out, one to Carla and one to the first caller to 800-760-KFMB. That's 760-5362. And you'll autograph that book for her?
Absolutely. I promise.
Okay.
With love, even.
Okay. Now, I know you wanted to address a number of the questions that Carla brought up when she called earlier. So can you go ahead? Who wants to talk first?
Well, I actually wanted to interject a little bit of my own feelings, because I related so much to what Carla was saying, because my motivation for most of my adolescence and young adult and even my 30s was about trying to please others and taking other people's opinion of what I should look like, what I should act like, and what I should be, and trying to make them my own. What took me years to realize is that I had the right to be comfortable and figure out and develop my own sense of my self-image and my self-worth and my self-confidence. And when I absolutely came to a place of peace and was able to come from the inside out, then other people's opinions did not hold as much weight in my life. And that, to me, was one of the essences of my healing process, because I finally took my power back. And when somebody says to me, wow, you could lose 5 pounds, then I step back now and I can say, well, I appreciate your opinion. I don't agree with that. And thank you for your opinion, but I'm going to trust my own body and my own judgment now. Whereas in the past, I trusted everybody else's but mine.
And you, Dr. Curry, you wanted to say some things also about
Carla was
book?
making an assumption that all men like a certain body type. And actually, when you look at the research, if you ask women what kind of body type they want, it'll be a thinner version of what the heterosexual men say they like in terms of a partner. So actually, men tend to prefer like larger women, maybe who have more breasts and hips and thighs and those kind of female characteristics than the skinny skeleton-like model that we see.
I can absolutely say I got more attention at 130 pounds than I did at 100 or 90 pounds. I mean, I weigh about 120 now, and that's pretty stable for me. But at 90 pounds, we have no figure. You know, we're not appealing in that respect. But that's still not the motivation for most people who become anorexic. They want to hide their womanliness, and I say that. I'm speaking for myself. That was my motivation.
Right.
Well, I would agree that that's a common thing, is the denial of their femininity through the eating disorder, so that they actually end up making themselves less attractive.
Do you Doctors Curry and Hessling, find that many of the women who have eating disorders had some kind of abuse as children?
It's a very common finding. It's not a universal finding, and I want to make that real clear, because a lot of people think automatically because there's an eating disorder there's been abuse, but that's not the case. But it is very, very common.
But it's also very common in other women too, with other disorders. So it's common, period.
Right, and in defining abuse, I mean, it's not just physical abuse or sexual abuse or verbal abuse. It can even be emotional abuse of not allowing a young person, a 14-year-old, to make a decision that she easily could have made by, her parental guidance, and have it be more control than guidance.
Now, I want to remind the listeners, I noticed that there were a couple of calls that hung up before Chris could get to them. So if you still want a copy of that book, give us a call at 800-760-KFMB. That's 760-5362. If Chris is on the line with one caller, just let it ring until he gets to you. He'll get to you. Okay, let's go on with one more, compulsive overeating.
Compulsive overeating itself is not formally considered an eating disorder. It is a disorder of eating behavior, but because there are many factors and not necessarily psychological considerations in the overeating, it's not considered a formal eating disorder.
Now, do you find, though, that a lot of people are compulsive overeaters,
Oh, yes.
especially in today's society?
That's very common. What distinguishes that, again, from the bulimia is it doesn't include the compensatory behaviors to prevent the weight gain, such as the purging and the excessive exercising and things.
Mm-hmm.
The overeating often leads to obesity and the problems with all of that. Obesity is not also considered a formal eating disorder, although it certainly is a disorder. It's a general medical condition, but it doesn't necessarily have the same psychological syndrome associated and the psychiatric or psychological factors that the eating disorders do. So it's not formally considered an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, anything else you want to say, or should we move on to talk about treatment? I know, Dr. Curry, you wanted to start talking about treatment, so we get that in.
I wanted to make a distinction between anorexia and bulimia in terms of treatment, because anorexics have a harder time wanting to get treatment. They're kind of doing what our society is telling them to do in an extreme way. Be thin, be perfect. Those are the messages that women get anyway. So they're doing it even better than other women, they think. Now, bulimic is throwing up every day, and they call it kneeling to the porcelain goddess, if you will. So she knows she's doing something that's a little strange. So we call it ego dystonic, because doesn't feel like she should be doing it. She can actually feel like she needs treatment, where the anorexic will feel like she just needs to do what she's doing better. So we see a lot more willingness for treatment in bulimic women when they come to treatment.
Yeah, I didn't know I was anorexic. I had no clue. If somebody would mention it to me, I thought they were jealous.
Yeah, and most of the anorexics I see are teenage girls being brought in by their parents. They do not want to come to treatment. They're resisting treatment. Bulimics tend to self-refer. They'll come in saying, I'm tired of this. I don't want to throw up every day. This is just a horrible way to live.
Now, when an anorexic comes in with her parents, let's say, and doesn't want treatment, how do you get through that barrier?
Sometimes we don't. If it's a case where the person's in medical danger, they may have to go to an inpatient unit against their will. It's very difficult and a very hard decision for a parent to make. But.
Mm-hmm. And Cynthia, what turned you around?
Well, one thing that I wanted to say today is that I didn't seek treatment, and part of the reason was, as I mentioned earlier off air, that times I could afford treatment, I didn't want it. I needed my crutch, and the times that I did really want to get help, I couldn't afford it, and because it was so extraordinarily expensive. And so I kind of struggled a silent battle. I didn't tell anybody until I wrote my book. Most of the people I worked with, and a lot of my friends didn't, well, I say that my friends I'm sure knew, but they were surprised that I had dealt with bulimia for so many years because I was an expert at hiding it. The thing that turned me around, and I refer to this as my spiritual awakening, and I just had a situation over a period of time where I got so tired of living that I just was going to just give up. I couldn't continue to live this way. And I'd been fear-based. I mean, everything about my life was fear-driven. Every decision I made was fear-driven. The eating disorders were driven by my fear. And so at that point of kind of surrendering, going, okay, it's over, I guess there was a moment of clarity, and I didn't have to worry about everything. And at that moment, I was able to what I call here that inner voice, higher self, Holy Spirit, however you want to define that part of ourselves that really is our loving self. And not to get into great detail, but my book kind of in a fable sort of environment explains what happened in my own life. And that was the turnaround for me to start thinking differently. But I held on to my disease for 3 more years after I discovered that there may be a different way to look at life, not so fear-based. And I think that with psychological and medical treatment and a spiritual awakening of that sort, you can get into a place of healing and recovery very quickly if you're open to it. And I wish I could have turned and would have turned to treatment many, many years earlier. Yeah.
We do have to take our last commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk about SHARP's program, and we'll also talk about the talk you're going to give at UCSD next month. So, and how people can get your book and so on.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Jerry Graff. You're listening to the Sharp Health Hour. We're going to take our last commercial break. Give us a call at 760 KFMB. That's 800-760-5362, pound or star 760 on a cell phone. If you have questions for any of my guests, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. This is Jerry Graff, and this is the Sharp Health Hour on KFMB We're talking today about eating disorders, and we do have a caller on the line, Cindy from North County. Cindy, how are you?